I remember my senior year of high school, I always wanted this one teacher. His name was Mr. Tamborino. We called him Tambo. He was the football coach. He was like the coolest dude ever. He was very successful in real estate and he taught English, 12th grade English, and everybody wanted to take this class. And I finally got into it as a senior. I missed out on the sophomore English class and other classes that he was teaching, but I finally got into it as a senior. And I walk in the classroom and there's this phrase behind me that I think really defined and changed how I saw the world. But before I get into this phrase, thank you for checking out this channel. My name is Ruslan. I'm a hip hop, spoken word artist, entrepreneur, and this channel exists to encourage, inspire, empower other creative entrepreneurs. If you're new here, consider subscribing. So as I'm sitting there, my senior year of high school, the phrase that was behind me all over the wall in big old letters, it said, I am responsible. And I remember Tambo telling us, if you could understand this truth, if you could understand this one fact about life, you will always learn and figure out ways to be successful. If you could just start with the idea of responsibility for your own actions, responsibility for your finances, responsibility for your grades, responsibility for your hobbies, responsibility for your relationships. If you could just start and take responsibility, that'll always give you a different perspective and an edge over everybody else. And so I took that and I internalized it. And as I've grown up and I've started a family and became full-time with the music and started a label and traveled and done all these things, I've always kept that mantra in the back that not everything that happens around me or to me is my fault, but ultimately everything is my responsibility, that I'm ultimately responsible for the good, the bad, the ugly, and I'm responsible for how I respond to adversity, to success, to failure, to challenges, to setbacks, to relationships that go sour. I am ultimately responsible for my response. And as an entrepreneur, that is so key because you don't have a boss above you to blame. There's no one else. The buck stops with you. There's nobody else that you can refer to and say, it's their fault, I'm not successful, it's this, it's that. No, ultimately I'm responsible. If I'm successful, it's because I put in the work, you know, and if I'm not successful, it's not always my fault. And maybe some variables didn't line up or certain things didn't happen, but if I'm not successful, that's ultimately my responsibility as well. And so I want to encourage you guys, and in the light of all the recent things that have been happening, I think what I'm hoping for is that as we're seeing racial tension, as we're seeing the situation in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I have some friends out there that were close to some of the protesters that got hurt, as we're seeing these different things happening, is that the state of racial affairs in America, it's not my fault. First of all, I'm originally from the former Soviet Union. My lineage literally had nothing to do with American racism, but it's ultimately my responsibility as a white male to step up and take ownership of my privilege, to take ownership of the way I've benefited in this society, and to speak up for those whose voices may not be taken as seriously, whose voices may be a bit more disenfranchised. And so I think as we're looking in this social climate and what we're asking for white America, we're asking for the white church to do, it's not your fault that there's racial tension and white nationalism and supremacy and all these different things. It's not necessarily your fault. You may have not had nothing to do with it as a white male if you are white, but it is our responsibility as people in this society, and this society does benefit me as a white male. I do have white privilege. It is our responsibility to take ownership of that, and it is our responsibility to be the voice of change and hope so that we can turn the corner as a country and really move towards not just tolerance, I'm gonna tolerate, you're different, but I'm gonna tolerate. No, but true love and true acceptance and true harmony as best as we can. I know we're flawed as humans. And this to me, some of you guys know I'm a Christian, this to me really goes back to the biblical narrative of like, it wasn't Jesus's fault that humanity sinned, but you know what? Jesus said, it's not my fault, but I'm gonna take responsibility. And he steps off his throne in heaven, he steps into humanity, he steps into human history, he comes as a baby, born in a manger, humbled, bottom of the barrel, in the ghetto, steps in, lives the perfect life, and takes responsibility for our sin, takes responsibility for the world, and he didn't have to. And if you're white, you don't have to say it's your fault, but you should take responsibility and you should own up. And I'm going to take responsibility. My perspective is a bit more unique and a bit more nuanced because my wife is black, my son is mixed. So I'm more invested, I'll be honest with you guys. But at the end of the day, I'm taking responsibility and I'm speaking up and I'm saying these things are not okay. It is not okay to see one race or ethnicity as superior over another. It is not okay to impose violence. It is not okay to have hate in your heart towards people that are different than you. It's just not okay. And this is not a political issue. This is a humanitarian issue. So I encourage all you guys out there, take responsibility. Take responsibility personally. Take responsibility for your actions. Take responsibility for the things that are your fault, but man up and take responsibility for the things that aren't your fault. So if this video encouraged you, do me a favor, hit the like button, share it, tag some friends in it. And if you guys want, questions or anything like that, feel free to leave a comment. I read every single comment. I want to hear from you guys. Is this something you wrestle with, responsibility? Because this is something I've been much more intentional about. The more responsibility I take, the easier things seem to be. And it's not to like, oh, I'm gonna carry all of the world's problems on my shoulders. It's just, listen, I got a voice and I take responsibility in my response of how I deal with it. I can't take responsibility for you, but I'm taking responsibility in my response and how I deal with it. So thank you for checking out this video. Share it with some friends, tag some friends, give me a thumbs up. And go pre-order that Indy Jones. It comes out next Monday. I promise you it's fire. You're gonna love it. Go pre-order that joint. Thank you guys so much. Peace.